In the heart of Lagos, where the streets hummed with the sounds of traffic, laughter, and market cries, there stood a narrow alley few dared to enter after sunset. At the end of that alley was a dimly lit sign, barely hanging by its hinges, with crooked red letters that read anyhow restaurant. The place was infamous not for its food, but for the whispers that followed those who ate there. The old women at the market stalls would shake their heads and mutter prayers whenever its name was mentioned. That food is cooked for spirits, not for humans, they'd say. Yet curiosity has always been the devil's favorite meal, and it was curiosity that brought Tund, a young delivery driver, to its door one rainy evening. He had been searching for shelter from the storm when the faint aroma of roasted meat and pepper soup drifted through the rain, wrapping around his senses like a spell. His stomach growled, and despite the unease crawling up his spine, he followed the scent. Inside, the restaurant was quiet to quiet. The air was thick with the smell of spices, but something beneath it, something metallic and sweet, made his nose twitch. The walls were painted dark red, the color of dried palm wine or perhaps blood. A single flickering bulb hung from the ceiling, casting shadows that moved like living things. Behind the counter stood a woman, tall and thin, her eyes too pale for her ebony skin, her smile stretched a little too wide. "You came hungry," she said, in a voice that hummed like a drumbeat from the earth's core. "Sit, eat, we serve those who find us." Tund hesitated, but his hunger won. He sat by a table in the corner while she brought a steaming bowl of soup. The aroma was intoxicating, rich, spicy, perfect. He dipped his spoon and tasted. It was unlike anything he'd ever eaten, soft, tender, almost sweet. His body shivered with delight, his senses sharpening, his heartbeat loud in his ears. "What meat is this?" he asked. The woman smiled, her pale eyes gleaming. "The kind that fills your hunger forever." Her answer was strange, but the food was irresistible. Tund ate until the bowl was empty, until not a single drop of soup remained. Then the room began to shift. The bulb above him flickered, and the walls seemed to pulse. The smell of spice turned foul, heavy with rot. He looked down at the bowland, saw not soup but bones, human bones, picked clean. His stomach churned. He stumbled back, but his legs trembled, his fingers numb. The woman was closer now, her smile gone. "You have eaten what belongs to the other side," she said softly. "Now they will come to claim you." Her voice echoed as the door slammed shut on its own. The shadows on the wall began to move, forming shapes, faces, arms, and whispers. Tund tried to run, but the floor beneath him rippled like water, swallowing his feet. The woman's eyes glowed faintly as she whispered something in a language older than the city itself. "No one eats in any How restaurant and leaves whole." The last thing Tund saw before darkness took him was the reflection of his own terrified face on the silver spoon. His eyes no longer human, but glassy and hollow, like all the others who had come before him. When Tund vanished, no one in Lagos noticed right away. The city swallowed people daily lost, forgotten, replaced by the noise of survival. But in the weeks that followed, strange whispers began to spread among the Okada riders and the night vendors. Someone said they'd seen Tund near the market at dawn, his face pale, his eyes blank, walking as if in a trance. Others swore they'd heard his voice echoing down the narrow alley where anyhow restaurant stood, calling for help that never came. The police never found him, and the restaurant stayed open, its crooked red sign flickering like a dying ember. One night, Ngozi, a university student with a taste for the supernatural, decided to investigate. She was fearless, sore foolish, and armed only with a flashlight and her phone camera. Her friend begged her not to go, warning that place eats souls, not food, but curiosity burned in her like fire. The alley was silent as she entered, her footsteps echoing. The sign above the door buzzed faintly. When she pushed the door open, a bell jingled softly, though there was no breeze. The same woman stood behind the counter, her pale eyes glinting in the dim light. "Welcome," she said, smiling. "Table for one." Ngozi swallowed hard, but nodded. "I've heard stories," she began, pretending confidence. "They say your food is cursed." The woman chuckled, the sound dry as bones. "People say many things to hide their own hunger. Sit and see for yourself." Reluctantly, Ngozi sat. Her phone trembled in her hand as she started recording. The woman vanished into the kitchen and returned moments later with a tray. On it were 5 steaming bowls, each filled with something different: to jollof, rice, plantain, egusi soup, and peppered meat. "Pick whichever you like," she said. "But once you taste, you must finish." Ngozi hesitated, her curiosity warring with fear. Then, slowly, she reached for the peppered meat. She chewed one piece, and at first it was delicious, spiced perfectly, melting in her mouth. But then, beneath the taste of pepper and oil, she felt something wrong. A texture, too soft, too human. Her stomach turned. She dropped the meat and looked closer. The piece on her plate had a fingernail. Her breath caught in her throat as she looked up and froze. Around her, the restaurant was no longer empty. At every table sat motionless figures: men, women, children dressed in tattered clothes, their eyes open but lifeless, skin gray and tight like old leather. They were the customers who never left. Some clutched half-empty bowls. Others stared blankly ahead as if waiting for their next bite. And Josie stumbled back, her flashlight shaking. The woman watched her calmly. "They came hungry," she whispered, "and now they serve the hunger that feeds me." Suddenly, the dead customers turned their heads toward Josie in unison, their mouths opening silently. The room filled with a low hum, a chorus of whispers calling her name. Ngozi screamed and bolted for the door, but it slammed shut. The woman's eyes glowed like embers. "You've tasted it," she said. "You belong." Ngozi pounded the door, praying, crying, shouting him, till her voice joined the whispers. The next morning, anyhow, restaurant was open again. The same flickering sign outside, the same sweet smell drifting through the air. And at the corner table, a new figure sat motionless, a half-finished bowl before her, a phone in her cold, unmoving hand screen, frozen on the last video she ever took. It was said that anyhow, restaurant only truly came alive at midnight, when the city's noise faded and the air thickened with secrets. Those who lived near the alley swore that if you stayed awake long enough, you could hear faint, clinking sound: spoons scraping bowls, chairs moving, soft laughter that didn't belong to the living. One such night, Chaik, a night watchman, decided to uncover the truth. He had heard the stories for years, and though fear gnawed at his mind, greed gnawed harder. Rumor had it that the restaurant hid money and gold from customers who vanished. So, Armed with a flashlight and a charm from his grandmother, an old cowrie shell tied to a string, Chike crept into the alley just before midnight. The sign above the door flickered, glowing blood-red against the darkness. He pushed it open. The bell chimed, and the smell of pepper soup rolled out like smoke. The restaurant looked empty, chairs neatly arranged, tables wiped clean. But the air felt heavy, like it was breathing. Chike stepped inside, the door closing softly behind him. His flashlight flickered, and in that stuttering beam, he thought he saw movement, a shadow shifting across the far wall. He turned quickly, but there was nothing there. "Foolish tales," he muttered, walking toward the counter. Behind it, the kitchen door was slightly open, and faint light glowed within. He pushed it gently and froze. Inside, dozens of pots simmered, though no one was there to stir them. The lids rattled softly, as though something beneath them was alive. Steam filled the air, and Chike wiped his eyes as he stepped closer. One pot hissed louder than the rest. Against his better judgment, he lifted the lid and nearly dropped his flashlight. Inside was not stew or soup, but faces, human faces, half-formed, bubbling like dough. Their eyes rolled, their lips moved silently, as if whispering prayers. Chike stumbled back, horrified. He turned to run, but standing in the doorway was the woman from the legends, the one with pale eyes. Her head tilted slightly as she smiled. "You came for treasure?" she asked softly. "Then eat." With a motion of her hand, the pots lifted from the stoves, their contents swirling. Faces screaming silently as the lids crashed open. From the shadows, the customers appeared, the same lifeless diners, now moving, now breathing, their joints creaking as they shuffled toward him. Chike screamed, clutching his charm. "Leave me," he shouted, raising it high. The cowrie shell glowed faintly, and for a moment the figures hesitated. The woman's smile faltered. "Old power," she hissed, "but old power fades." She reached out, her long fingers stretching impossibly far. Cheeky's flashlight shattered, plunging the room into darkness. The air was filled with the sound of chewing wet, slow chewing, and his own heartbeat pounding like a drum. Then silence. When morning came, the restaurant was quiet again, the smell of pepper and smoke drifting lazily from the windows. On one of the tables, a new pot sat steaming gently. Inside, something golden glinted beneath the broth, a small cowrie shell, split clean in two. That night, when the first customer arrived, the woman greeted them with her pale-eyed smile and said softly, "Welcome. We have a new recipe tonight." And somewhere deep in the kitchen, the pots began to whisper once more. Long before the city of Lagos had its paved streets and blinding lights, there was a small village by the river called Obanla, known for its food and festivals. It was there that a woman named Ebel lived, beautiful, soft-spoken, with eyes that seemed to shimmer like moonlight on water. She was the village's best cook, and people traveled for miles just to taste her pepper soup. They said she could turn the simplest roots and herbs into feasts fit for kings. But with her gift came envy. When a drought struck Obanla, the people turned desperate. The river dried, the soil cracked, and the hunger in their bellies turned them cruel. One night they came to Ebel's hut, demanding she cook. "There is nothing left to feed you," she pleaded, clutching her pots. "The earth is empty." But the people did not believe her. They accused her of hoarding food, of witchcraft, of greed. In their anger, they tied her up and burned her hut believing they would find her secret stash of meat. But as the flames rose, Ebel cursed them with her final breath. Since you hunger so blindly, may you eat and never be full. May your greed feed on itself forever. When the fire died, all that was left of her were two pale eyes glinting in the ashes. The next morning, the villagers found their pots full again, simmering with meat, rich and fragrant. Starving, they devoured it. Only later did they realize the horror. The missing villagers, their neighbors, their kin, had not returned. Their hunger had been fed, but not by animals. The village of Obanla vanished soon after, swallowed by the river when the rains returned. But sometimes travelers claimed to see a lone woman standing by the water, stirring a pot that steamed with strange light, her eyes pale as bone. Generations passed, the world changed, and Lagos grew over what was once that cursed ground. Yet the curse remained, buried deep in the soil, waiting for the hungry to call it forth. When the first buildings rose and the first restaurants opened, one place always stood in the shadows, Anyhow Restaurant, peering and disappearing like a ghost. It had no owner, no records, no bills, yet it never closed. Some nights, people swore they saw the same woman behind the counter, tall, ageless, her eyes gleaming faintly white under the dim bulb. The food was always too perfect, the meat too tender, the price too low. You came hungry, she would always say, her voice smooth and ancient. Eat, we serve those who find us. And those who ate, the city forgot them, but the restaurant did not. They became part of it, their faces joining the whispering walls, their bones flavoring the cursed broth. Some said Ebel had made peace with her curse. Others said she had become it, feeding the spirits of hunger that once devoured her people. No one knew for sure. But every few decades, when the moon turned red and the city's power flickered, the sign of Anyhow Restaurant would glow brighter, calling out to the desperate, the lonely, the hungry. And when they entered, Ebel's pale eyes would gleam once more, her soft voice rising above the hum of the city. No one eats and leaves whole. The storm rolled over Lagos like a hungry beast that night, thunder cracking open the sky as rain poured onto the empty streets. Neon lights flickered, and the city seemed to tremble with each gust of wind. Among the flashing signs and dripping alleys, one name glowed faintly red: Anyhow Restaurant. Inside, a single man sat hunched at a corner table. His name was Kalichi, a food vlogger chasing viral fame. He'd heard rumors of the cursed place, no receipts, no chef, no history, and he wanted to prove it was all superstition. His followers watched live as he streamed from his phone, rain tapping on the windows behind him. They say people vanish after eating here. He laughed, showing his face to the camera. But tonight, we find out the truth. The waitress appeared without a sound. She was tall, graceful, and dressed in white, her eyes strangely pale, almost silver. "What will you have?" she asked softly. Kalichi froze for a moment, remembering the urban legends. Then he grinned. "Your best dish." The woman nodded and disappeared into the kitchen. The live stream chat exploded with comments, people joking, daring him to eat, mocking the eerie mood. Minutes passed. The rain grew louder, and the lights flickered again. Finally, she returned with a bowl of soup, thick, steaming, and fragrant with spices he couldn't name. The smell was intoxicating. He picked up his spoon and tasted it. "Oh my God, he whispered. This is incredible. The comments filled with fire emoji. He took another bite, and another. Then suddenly he went quiet. His expression changed. He looked down at the bowl and saw something floating in it. Not meat, a small human finger. His stomach turned, and his body convulsed. The live chat exploded in panic as he stumbled backward, choking, the camera falling to the floor. In the final seconds of the stream, the pale-eyed woman's feet appeared beside the phone. You came hungry, she murmured, her voice low and ancient, and now you'll feed the hunger. The feed cut to black. When police arrived the next morning, the restaurant was gone, replaced by an empty, rotting building. Only Kalichi's phone remained, streaming static. But those who watched the live that night claimed the restaurant didn't just vanish. They said it moved. Some swore they saw its red glow appear miles away in another part of the city. Others said it appeared in Accra, Nairobi, even Johannesburg, always after a storm, always in a lonely street, and always with a new menu. The legend spread like wildfire, warnings whispered from mouth to mouth. Never eat in anyhow restaurant. It feeds you, but it never forgets you. And deep beneath the city, where the rainwater gathers and the sewers echo like tombs, there's said to be a place where the lost still whisper, the hungry, the careless, the forgotten. Their voices rise when the wind howls. And if you listen closely, you can still hear Kelechi's voice, faint, desperate, repeating his last words. Oh my God. This is incredible. Somewhere above, a pale-eyed woman stirs her pot again, smiling faintly as another sign flickers to life in a new city, glowing red in the rain. Anyhow, restaurant open all night.